Hello there. Welcome to the fourth episode of Dev's Wall. Thank you for watching. And if you have nothing better to do, just stay here and watch this because this is going to be really interesting. Today we have a special guest. He is right now, as of now, 2021 November. He's a delivery manager, development tech lead, and technology passionate with more than 12 years of experience working in a variety of products, including health, finance, ad tech, high traffic websites, customer service, and support. He's also enthusiastic about quality, simplicity, details, but more importantly, efficiency of a talented team collaboration. So I want to welcome Francisco Sevilla. How's it going? How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me here. Thanks for the invite.
Oh, thanks to you for accepting. I hope this is just the first
pleasure.
one. This is the first of more of
Counting
these
on that.
videos and conversations. Yeah. So how's it going? How are you now?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. A lot of work. It's never a complaint. It's always good to be busy, and especially doing what we like and enjoy doing. So it's great. I can't complain. What about you?
Excellent. I kind of have a same answer as you. So with some work, but we cannot complain. Yeah, I mean we are. It's kind of a trivial word, but we are kind of blessed to be in this area where, at this moment, there's a lot of work to do. Thankfully, so there's nothing else to do but keep working and enjoying as we can.
That's important. You said it perfectly.
So, all right. So, first of all, that's kind of a question that I ask to anyone. How did you start in this career? What got you involved into software engineering or IT?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and probably everyone has a different answer. I recall when I think it was elementary school or junior high, when I had my first interaction with a computer. Back then, we were talking about QBasic and programming languages such as those. I started playing with it. I enjoyed it. Even before then, when we started, for instance, since elementary school and even junior high, pretty much all my homework was done in a typing machine. So when I had my first computer, I enjoyed it tremendously. I enjoyed changing the font, size, colors, doing different formats. It was a great experience. So I tried to take it beyond that and start playing with different tools, start playing with different games. And then when I was in high school, I started having my first lessons about software development, programming as an analyst, and I quite enjoyed it. And more importantly, I believe I was not bad at it. I think I had certain ease to create code, so I enjoyed it even more. And I was not certain about which career I was going to study, but I knew it had to do with software development, so I went for it.
Nice. I think we belong to that generation when we saw the upgrade from the typing machine to the printer.
Yes,
right?
We're that old. Yes.
That exactly. we belong to that generation. Well, I was fortunate to have like an electronic typing machine. Or I don't know what's the correct name, but it's not like the mechanical.
No, I did have a mechanical one.
I did have mechanical, but then I have like an electronic kind of, which was really fancy. But that at that era, on those years, and then we switched to the computer, and everything is different. And I think new generations will switch or are switching between printers and non-printers. I don't know how to say, or just everything on tablets, or I don't know how it's going to think in the future.
Now it's all digital. It's all green.
It's all
less,
exactly
less
all
printing,
green.
Less paper.
Paperless, exactly. In a paperless world now. Yeah, that's really really cool. So moving on, still talking about the career, about your career now. How did you start? I mean, do you remember those days where even if you were still starting, or when you started to do uh, just some really software or some coding in a specific project? How was that?
Um, so I guess just want to make sure that I understood the question correctly. I guess we're talking not only about not school small projects, but real projects when you were being challenged.
Correct,
All
correct. I
right.
mean, yeah, I mean, let's say your kind of first job involving software development.
All right. I would
How was
have
it?
to go back to, I think it was 2004 ish, something like that. I was still in college. However, the University of Colima has these different departments, internal departments, where you do your, where you train yourself and you do your professional first experiences. And I was in this development center where we were doing multimedia software, mainly for educational purposes. So I started playing with an application that was for a digital museum, and that was created in a software in a language that is called Toolbook. Uh, it is something that I actually enjoyed for two reasons. Number one, it was my first experience, my first big challenge, and I really had a great mentor um, who was explaining not only how to do things, but in a way where he was teaching us the small games where we would practice certain logic and algorithms, and that was a great experience for me. And number two, because that language specifically is like writing a pseudo code. So it's not really about variables and equal sign. It was more of a set background of this object to this image. And you would write it like that, like if you were just reading it. So that was a great experience because it was the learning curve was really, really small. And it helped me to go or have that as a first challenge. Then I moved on to, well, actually, I took a break. My first job was actually in a call center doing tech support. So I took a break from software development. But after a year, I was lucky enough to get back on track where I belong. Then I was working in a variety of promotional websites for different companies. Those type of websites where you would register and input your code. For instance, the code that you get on your in the cookies or something like that. That code when you register that, you get a prize. Those type of promo websites. So I started working both back end and front end, and that whole full stack experience, which back then was not full stack, was just developer, website developer or a web developer. Before the whole full stack trend. That was something that I really enjoyed. So I just kept that track, I guess.
So
Yeah.
that was back then, like in which year? I mean,
So those type of projects, I'm talking about 2008, 2009,
all
probably.
right. So yeah, more like 12, 13 years ago. Nice. Uh, yeah, interesting. And I agree. But back then, where full stack was maybe we didn't have. I didn't know the word full stack or
No,
the term full stack.
you were
We
a
were just
developer.
exactly software
Yeah,
developer.
you would have to do pretty much all languages, all technologies, depending on the type of project. And then it's when the industry, I guess, it led us towards choosing one language, and then you would focus on that specific language, and then the trend started creating the backend developer, backend with Java, backend with PHP, backend with .NET, and then front end. And in the most recent years, front end with Angular, front end with React, front end with Vue. So back then, you were a developer, and you were doing software with whichever technology was best for that.
Yeah, I agree. Now it's will be hard to these days how tech trends are going. It's hard to be a really good full stack maybe because normally you focus on one thing. The
Yeah, you
things.
specialize in one thing, and I mean it's not all bad because the technologies have become more more robust, that you have to learn more about them. You have to specialize. One that it takes a lot of time. If you want to be an expert, if you want to be a senior on language, you have to take time, invest time and effort on a single technology. So it's not all bad in terms of specializing in one simple language, but I would, my recommendation would be not to focus, how we say it, not to marry with one language, but have some variety and some room to explore others.
I do agree. So sometimes in your career that's difficult because you get involved into specific tech
Yeah,
stack, and then you do that for
yeah,
many years or whatever, depending on the market or your jobs or whatever. Sometimes you do that, but I also agree that you need to keep open. At the end, it's software engineering. It's similar. I mean, it's the same, and that's I think
it
that's
is.
why companies these days, because back I mean maybe 8, 10 years ago it was a little bit different how the interviews were. I don't know if you agree, but
Yes,
nowadays they are more focused on the those typical code challenges or more or on design and architecture, more like agnostic things, right? That like you need to know as a software engineer, but not tied to a language or a stack, which is cool. I mean, at the end, we're going back to the basics that we need, the algorithms and
you actually
architecture.
mentioned. Yeah, I completely agree. You actually mentioned a word that I find to be key, which is software engineering versus software developer, right? Or what I call a frameworkist doesn't exist, but that's how I refer to those software developers who focus and only work with a specific framework, not even the language, but a framework on top of a language. But you touched a great point. You mentioned a great thing, which is becoming a software engineer, understanding the basics. I think that is something that was lacking for some period of time, and I'm glad to see that it's again becoming a trend. Understand the basics, um, taking the most out of a language, not only creating a few lines of code, but also defining the overall architecture of a solution, playing with different tools, many more tools than we used to have about 10 years ago, definitely.
Correct, and keeping with the same kind of same topic. How have you seen from the start of your career and these days? How is the evolution of the software industry? How have you seen that in terms of
It's
technical sides or anything in terms of human part? And how can you?
I would say that no other industry has evolved as much and as fast as the tech industry overall. Not only software, but tech
Agree.
overall. And you can see charts, you can see the trends, and nothing else has evolved as much as. Um, and you can see it on the devices, size of the devices, capacity of the devices, and capability of the devices. So it was not until I was in college, for instance, that I started seeing the first laptops. And nowadays, laptops are 1,000 times more efficient. Disk space, for instance, it's something that back then you would not even imagine. So the trend is to make the most. Well, it has two sides of the story. So one is now, for instance, back then we used to care a lot about memory usage, optimizing processes, because computers back then were not as optimal, were not as powerful as they are today. So back then we would care a lot about making a good use of memory. Right now, many people do not care about that because memory is what you have the most. You can use processes that may not be optimal. So you focus on different parts of the development, and you can see that in code. You can see that while designing databases with all the normalization that is involved, or lack of normalization that is involved, just to make it faster. So the trend is to make the most out of the tools and hardware that you have nowadays. And some of the best practices back then do not apply anymore, because the tools that you have today and the capabilities of the computer servers nowadays are as powerful as you would not have imagined in the past. So you do not have to worry a lot about making the most out of a few Ks of memory, for instance. It has evolved greatly. You have access to a lot other devices than what you used to have before. For instance, let's focus on a single language, just JavaScript as a global web development language that now you can use in client and browsers, in the server, in embedded devices, in desktop applications. So it's just been eating the world, and you don't have to learn multiple languages to do things that work in multiple devices. So before that, you would not, before being able to create, for instance, hybrid applications, you wouldn't have thought about learning one language that will work for most of the different environments. So it definitely has evolved greatly. And with that, it has also, my perception is that we're in a bubble, meaning that, again, this industry has changed as no other. And with that, for instance, talking about salaries, talking about job opportunities, talking about the projects and the challenges that we have in each project, it is something that 10 years ago you wouldn't have thought of. For instance, salaries, it's right now we're talking about 20 times greater salaries than what we had 10 years ago. It's crazy how things have changed. For good or bad, that's what it is right now. And why do I believe it's a bubble? Because it's definitely not gonna keep that pace for a long time. And my concern is that when it does break, what is it that we're gonna do? But that is something that you can look into the trends to see how things are changing. I definitely believe it is not going to disappear. But what we do as of today is definitely going to change.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you were reading my mind as also. I have really similar thoughts about all those things. I mean, the last thing you mentioned, it's kind of scary in a sense.
Mhm.
That we see in terms of the market and the demand is becoming kind of so high or so hot in this exactly in this era in the last maybe few years, and maybe in the next couple of years, or who knows
Yeah.
how much it will
It
be
will
like
last.
that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you say, I mean, there's so much, maybe there is so much investment in this era, or in these few years in that area. That's why salaries are increasing so much, and that's why everything is kind of it's a high demand it's a
Absolutely.
high demand thing right now, everything involved to software. And it seems
Yeah.
that it could maintain for a while, but it could also be like a bubble, as you say.
Yeah. I think we should be cautious about it.
Exactly. We should, I
I
mean,
can.
yeah, I do agree. Maybe we should take the advantage of all this trend, but as you said, be cautious. I totally agree.
Yeah, and I don't believe it's going to disappear just like that, but I do believe it's going to start, it's going to change. And this is not something new. We have seen that behavior in the past few years. And what I'm referring with this is, or what I mean is, for instance, I've always said that for me as a software developer, it is harder to learn another industry, for instance, what a mathematician does or what a doctor does, than for them to learn how to code in a specific language. And that's why many languages have become so popular recently. For instance, Python. Python is a language that I believe has a small learning curve, and not only how efficient it is, but also how simple it is to learn. It makes that financial analysts want to learn to use it so that they can review data or big chunks of data, right? So it is easier for them to learn a coding language than it is for me to learn what is it that they do. so that I can implement it in a specific language. And we have seen that behavior in the last few years. So that's what I mean when I say that the trend is changing. It is not, so software development is not going to be something generalistic in the next few years. I think it's becoming something more specialized and more specialized in the last few years, so that again, a physician, a mathematician, a doctor, an analyst, they can do their own code. So what is it for us? Well, I believe that for us, the next thing is to do or create the tools that they are going to have to use to make it simpler for them. So, I mean, those tools will have to exist. Those tools will have to be created. So I think that's the next step for us, to be able to build things that others can use. So we're switching to, for instance, you can see applications that can be created without a single line of code. Those no-code applications. You can see that. But those have to be developed by someone who knows coding, right? And
Totally
eventually
agree.
someone who knows the industry will be able to use those. So that's what I mean when things are changing. When I say things are changing, it's not that we're going to stop developing, but probably not anymore on those basic simple web APIs or web applications that are more general purpose. That's what I mean.
Yeah, you're totally right. You already mentioned some, but what else do you see on the trends in the technical part? Because you already mentioned the one that I like so much, which is the low code, no code things, and I don't know what else do you see? Do you foresee in the future, or even if you have researched anything?
Well,
What do you think?
one of the things that is here, it's not in the future. It's everything that has to do with machine learning and AI. Those are no longer futurist things. We have been playing with those for the last few years. There are a few things that maybe were not a big hit. For instance, you may have heard about augmented reality. For instance, that has been on for at least 10 to 12 years, if I recall correctly. But in my opinion, there was never a solid business case for that to be a hit. And maybe companies were not able to find how to do business or how to create a business model from those. But they're still around. You can still see those, and they're cool to watch. They're cool to play with. But maybe a business model is what has been lacking in those type of technologies. That maybe that's why they were not a great hit. But talking about intelligence, artificial intelligence, or machine learning, at least for the past 8 to 10 years as well, code has been creating itself. You see algorithms that I'm pretty sure that the developer no longer knows how it works or what is it that they do. They have evolved in a way that it thinks by itself. Eventually, with more input, they have more ways of finding solutions or predicting results, and it's being an evolving kind of thing. And on top of that, they have more access to data. So we share our data everywhere through our social media, through our phone devices, everywhere we go, or just by being near by a friend, for instance. You start saying things that maybe he or she liked or watched or something like that, just because of the fact that you were sitting next to that person for 5 minutes. So all those algorithms have a mind and a soul on their own already. So that's not necessarily futuristic. You see that. Who has not been in a situation where you just say something out loud and 5 to 10 minutes later you see a post
You have
of
an
that
ad.
in your wall? Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So
That's why you need to block the ads.
Yeah, yeah, but data analysis, I mean, they have access to all your information pretty much, right? So it's not a matter of sharing this post in Facebook saying that, hey, I do not accept you access my data. Your data has been public for 20 years already. So a post won't stop them from doing that. But back to machine learning, that is gonna continue for the next few years as well. And tools that we create will have to consider that in mind as well. They are going to have to evolve. They're going to have to predict. They're going to have to think on their own to come up with results, and then create things that not only work but that drive audience and drive the public to those needs. So um, it's no longer, for instance, let's go back to the origins of Microsoft and those big companies where they were developing a product, and then they were forcing you to use that product and use it in a certain way as because it was developed that way, right? Now tools start to make you believe it is what you need. It is they are about to making you think it was your idea, so you want to use it. So that's how projects and tools, I believe, are being created nowadays. They involve not only visual and sound, but they also involve thoughts, a lot of psychology in them, so that these type of tools want you to believe that it was your idea, so that you start using that. But again, that's just another trend that I'm seeing. So anything that has to do with machine learning, artificial intelligence, and anything that has to do with data analysis, it's gonna go for the next few years. I don't know if you watched. So it's been a few. I believe it was about a year ago when they presented Neuralink. Did you watch that presentation?
I don't remember, to be honest, but yeah.
So Neuralink, it is one thing that I enjoyed watching. This was Elon Musk presenting
The
it.
one with Elon Musk, yeah.
Yeah, the one with the pigs. So when they inserted the chip on their brain, and how they were reading the pulse on their brain, on the nerves, and how they were predicting how the pigs were going to walk, and how each of their muscles on, and this is where we're going to be placing at a given time. And they were showing charts when they were placing the difference in between what the chip was reading and predicting and where the actual pig was walking, for instance, or moving around. So the proximity between the prediction and the reality was close enough. And the idea behind, I mean, one of the things that you could foresee as an application from that, just think about, for instance, a person with certain walking condition or paraplexic, for instance, people who cannot move but can think about the move, right? So why can't we think about an exoskeleton? So the chip sends a transmission and it just moves the legs and they start walking. And so that type of thing, when they predict something, again, back to machine learning, I think that's going to be the future for a long run.
Oh man, that's so interesting. That is, we could dedicate a whole episode or many episodes to these tech trends and talk about machine learning, artificial intelligence. So that's really cool and in a way kind of scary for some people.
Yes, agreed.
It could be scary, but it's really it's a really new, interesting world. It's not new. It has been there for a while, but it seems like new.
Interesting for sure. Yeah.
But it's really interesting. I mean, all these tech trends. I like to see the positive side of all of them. For example, I've been involved in low code development for like maybe 3 years, and it's really cool. It's really fascinating how I was used to developing in the, I would say, traditional way, and then with these new tools, I can do things more than twice as fast, even more 3-4 times as faster than I did. I don't need to do lots of infrastructure and other things that I needed to do with the previous or traditional methods. And I think that's one of the cool trends that are gonna be alive, and it be, I mean, because I mean time and money is everything.
Exactly.
It's about time and money. The
It
faster you
is,
can develop and cheaper, that'll do.
Exactly. Even if it is not optimal, but again, there's a balance in between
Exactly.
how fast you need it, how much you want to pay for that, and again, you don't worry about the capabilities of the machine anymore because they can do it, they can handle it, right? So the higher level it has right now, the better for many people, and it is a cool trend.
Yeah. And moving on to a related subject, but more of a recommendation from your experience. What would you think
Okay.
would be like skills to for a software engineer? What would you think is skills to have, and maybe skills not to have that maybe
Well, this
this
is
is a
a cool one. Yeah, yeah, this is a cool
we
topic.
can we can I mean we can start a really interesting debate
Yes,
because
I agree. Yeah,
there might be you can you can express everything you want. There maybe there's belief that you need to have something but you really don't, or maybe the opposite, that you something is not really necessary, but at the end, and given their experience, it's a must.
so I want to start by explaining this is my personal thought, right? So this is my belief, and this is something that I've seen throughout my career, and with so I manage software development teams. So I this is something that I've seen in my teams as well, or back when I was doing software development myself. So one of the things that I believe is more important, maybe it may sound cliche, but you definitely have to enjoy what you do. You definitely have to be passionate about technology. You cannot be here just because someone told you it's cool, or just because someone told you there's a good salary in this industry. You have to enjoy what you do, or else you're going to be stuck in a job that you find yourself repeating yourself doing the same over and over again, and it's going to annoy you eventually. And no money can for that. I can say so. It's the first thing that I would recommend is that you definitely have to enjoy what you're doing. If you're here for the money, you're definitely going to struggle a lot with it. I've always believed that money is a result of what you do rather than the why you do it. So if you do well, if you enjoy what you're doing, you keep improving, you do things that work for others, eventually the results are going to come, right? But if you're here because you learn from others that there's a good pay, where you're going to have a hard time. So you have to enjoy what you do. You have to be passionate about it. You have to be proactive, and this is something that I see lacking in many people. You have to be proactive. You cannot just sit there and wait for someone to tell you what is that you need to do. It doesn't work that way, and believe you me, I've seen that a lot. I've seen that a lot. I even have job interviews when I've been interviewing people, when they say, "Hey, I need to have clarity on what is it that I need to do. I need someone to explain to me what they want me to do." And what I tell them is, "Well, thank you for your time. I wish you the best." Right. So you have to be proactive. You have to want to learn new things. You want to improve yourself on a daily basis. You want to look back about 6 months ago and hate what you did 6 months ago. You want to improve every day. So if you're not proactive, if you're not passionate about what you do, again, you're gonna have a hard time because others will, and others will do better.
Yeah, at least I that's a skill that I have, because I hate everything I did hours ago or months ago.
While you improve fast.
At least that's one of the skills I have.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's very important. That you have to enjoy what you do. You have to keep improving and be proactive. You cannot wait until others tell you what to do. It's not going to work that way. Where others will improve, while you just have the same job and have the same role and responsibilities as you have for the last 3 or 4 years. So those are the things that I definitely recommend. So what do I suggest to avoid? Being passive. So related to what I was saying, I definitely recommend or would recommend to avoid being passive, being here for the money, being here for following others, or working next to a friend. It doesn't work that way. So to avoid to be someone who believes that you can do everything without the assistance of others, you need to be a team player. You definitely need to work along with others because projects are going to be bigger than you in terms of they're gonna they're gonna want the project to be done faster. Eventually, others will know better than you, and you have to be open to teach others as to learn from others. So you have to be a team player. You cannot be one of those guys who sit there and want to eat the world by themselves. Again, we can debate on this if you will, but I found teams to work better when they're open to learning and teaching others than those who have an attitude of if you want to know something, just ask. I know everything. Those don't work in my opinion. So I would recommend to avoid that. I know everything type of attitude. It's always about collaboration and teamwork.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is yeah, might sound a little bit familiar. I mean, we need to do like a really deep analysis on those, especially those things to avoid or maybe not necessary. Uh, to being passive and do it for the money, man. That can touch some. That could sound familiar for some of us
I
in some circumstances.
Yes,
So
and I've seen it a lot. That's why
yeah,
I'm bringing this up.
correct. But the important thing is that we need to analyze that maybe, and it's okay. It's okay to to change maybe or to do your
Oh,
analysis.
absolutely. Oh, absolutely. I definitely recommend that. And it is not that it's bad if you do it that way, but in my experience, it's not the best way to
It
do it.
does
It's not
exactly.
how
It,
it
it it
works.
doesn't lead to success, right? Maybe
Exactly.
doesn't lead. I mean, if you don't have, you just do it for the money. At the end, if you don't enjoy, I don't know, coding or software development. I mean, you won't. I mean, you won't
And
survive.
and
You won't
and
survive a lot.
and you will become one of those people who we refer as job hoppers, right? So you're here
Oh
for
yeah,
6 months, and then you get another offer and you switch to that job without learning some of the basics. So eventually you may end up getting tons of money on your paycheck, but when you go to the basics, you're not that senior as you may want to believe. And I think it's
yeah,
it's 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 good for everyone to do that retrospective and to figure out where is it that we can improve. I try to do that, if not on a daily basis, at least very often, where I try to say, hey, this is not working for me that well. I can improve a few things here and there, and there are definitely areas that I struggle a lot with, but at least I know that I'm enjoying what I do and what I'm doing, and that for me that's really important.
yeah, yeah. Totally agree. And it's that part can be common these days. Given we
Yes.
previously talked about how the market is on a high demand, so it's really typical, and I cannot judge all the people. But
Yeah.
it's it is true. There's a lot
Uh,
of people that jump from one job to the other because the market is that way.
Exactly. The market
You
is that
you
way. I was gonna
you
say
you,
that.
you cannot. You understand. You are in a position that maybe you understand because the market is that way. If suddenly they offer you these tons of money because you became an expert of certain thing, uh, sometimes you cannot say no.
Exactly.
But
I completely
there
agree
are
and
things
understand.
that I do agree that you need to analyze. In the long term, you need to like or really enjoy what to do and to find like a goal, right? Like maybe a general goal on what you're doing, maybe.
And it is important for you to know why it is that you're doing it and follow
Yeah,
that path. If it works for you, keep doing it. I mean, if that is your motivation and if that is your goal, if that's what driving your career, go for it. If that works for you, keep doing it. It does not work the same for everyone, and I understand that. And as you mentioned, so my words, market is that way. So we're fitting that behavior, unfortunately, and it would be crazy sometimes to say no to such a big opportunity in many cases.
yeah, I do agree. Yeah, interesting. I mean, I really have so much coincidence with your thoughts on these skills to have and to avoid.
It is not
Um,
that we have known each other for like 32 years, right?
it is, yeah, maybe 30 something. Let's not say that we are that old, but yeah,
That's
more
right.
than 30 years, I guess.
More than 30 years, that's correct.
All right. So moving on, you told me previously that you're gonna show us a quick demo, right?
Yes, a
If
very,
you still
very
have
quick one.
some time.
So very, very quick one. I can start sharing my screen.
Yeah, yeah, you
But
can go ahead.
this is related to how I believe again that it is important for us to know what is it that we're doing, and it is important for us to figure out which are the type of tasks. For instance, you were mentioning about no code or low code recently. Let me start by sharing my screen. So it is really important for you to know a couple of things. What are the type of tasks that you are doing repeatedly that you could automate, which is a big word nowadays as well. You have to figure out how you can perform certain type of automation and optimization to your day-to-day business. But the idea here is, this is just to show kind of a very simple tool created in just a couple of hours, just to prove a concept, right? Which is one of the reasons why we become developers, or at least one of the reasons why I became a developer, is because I knew that I wanted to create things that worked well and worked for others, right? And with that, there is a lot of business logic and models that need to be applied on different projects. However, many projects can be very similar one to another. So there are a lot of tasks that repeat themselves very often. So for instance, if you start a new project, so this demo is going to be a simple API, just a dummy one. So if you create a project to manage X, Y, and Z, so you walk through the authentication, work with roles, groups, and permissions. So you create a user management, and then you create your API with endpoints to manage users, to manage sessions, to manage to-dos, to manage any schema, right? So then you move to another project and you repeat yourself. You do the same kind of CRUD type of tasks, right? So you work again with an authentication module. You do again the user management, permissions management, to-dos, and all that. And then you switch to a third, fourth, fifth project, and you start doing the same. And it is not that after maybe a month or so that you start actually work on the interesting stuff, which is the business logic, which is what makes that project interesting, right? But it's not after you completed kind of the core or the scaffolding of the project. So what I'm sharing now is how we can either create or use certain tools that help us expedite that process, because I want to jump right into the interesting part the day after, if possible. So there are a lot of frameworks, there are a lot of tools that can help you do that, or you can create your own based on the needs that you have on each project. So what I'm showcasing here is just a simple API creator with dummy CRUD and entities that we can manage. So for instance, let's say that you want to manage, feel free to suggest something. Let's say that we can manage, for instance, to-dos here, or let me know if you'd like to, what is it that you would like to manage here? So something simple, a simple entity.
Well, we can put an event entity or
events. Let's play with events. That's a good idea. So what I'm showing here is how you can do this with, for instance, you can create yourself let's say an agent, for instance, a Hey Google or an Alexa or a Hey Weber, please create a web application with this and that, or through a configuration file. In this case, I'm doing the YAML file, or even writing it, right? Like create an API with certain characteristics or certain specs. So what I'm showing here, just let's play with a simple configuration file. For instance, you mentioned we have to-dos. So we're creating an API node. This is just an example. So we'll do user scheme. We'll do to-dos, and to-dos have, let's say, a title, which may be a string. They have a description, which may also be a string. They have a status ID, which may be a number. And then you mentioned events, which may have, again, a title,
date,
also
maybe.
a description, a date. I'll play with it as a string for the time being. What else? Confirm status, true or false, or again, status, number. What else may, like venue, for instance, things like that, right? So the idea behind it is that not to spend days or weeks doing the structure of a project, but simple run a script, it'll generate a project for you. You can jump into that project, for instance, and see the, sorry, this was generator, this was the output folder. And then you can just run it. You can install the dependencies. You can, for instance, set your variables, your environment variables. Again, and in a matter of just a few minutes, you may have, for instance, let me play with a few connection strings here. So in a matter of seconds, I'm going to be using a temporary user to connect to the database that I was showing a minute ago. So without any effort or without any code whatsoever, you can just run an API and it'll connect to a database and it'll give you a working API, or it is going to, for instance, get
with
you
with the CRUDs, the
basic
of
CRUDs, exactly,
of those entities or tables you created, right?
Those tasks that you find repeating yourself, project after project after project, that become tiresome at some point, that there's not a need for you to go through that, and eventually you can, for instance,
there's no complex algorithm in there.
Exactly. and this type of projects, for instance, that you can just,
the Swagger is already there.
The Swagger is already there. So let's focus on, let's create an event, for instance. So this type of tools, again, this was just a dummy, simple example of something that I was creating, but for demo purposes. But there are tools out there that you can use, and the idea is to avoid repeating yourself, to expedite the time that you spend creating the project, the core of the project, not the business logic. And this is important to mention, that these type of tools help you to create the generics, as you were correctly saying, that the generic CRUDs and entities of an application, that definitely not first, for instance, definitely not the logic and the business logic of the project. That is up to you. Actually, that is what you want to do. That's what you want to have fun with, but not with the basics, not with the things that you're repeating yourself project after project after project. So, for instance, these type of things help you. Did I create a to-do or an event? Event, there you go. So this type of project exactly help you to do that. So they help you to create those entities. Oh, this is why. My mistake. I was just training a moment ago. But this is the type of things that you can play with, and eventually it's not finding events, but it's finding events. So let me just create one more. There's a typo there that I'll have to fix. But let me play with it real quick. So these type of tools are for.
Yeah. Maybe it's better to put it in singular.
Yes, exactly. But I'll actually event should have been the proper
event
one.
Yeah.
On the configuration, event would have been the entity, same as to do, same as user. Actually, that have been the proper one. I'll have to do it all over again. But let's say that here you'll create an event, just title. Sample event is something real quick.
And then you should see it.
There you go.
In the sample.
And again, you should see an example and all that. Some examples. So the idea behind it, whether it's a simple demo project it is for you not to repeat yourself, and that's the point. To jump right into the business logic, to jump right into the fun part of doing a new project, learning
Correct.
what makes it different from other projects that you have worked with in the past, and stop repeating yourself. Because ideally, we're developers to create things, not to start doing the same all over and over and over again. And that's what keeps us as developers motivated. I mean, doing new things, creating things that others can use. That's what keeps at least my motivation, right? So
Yeah, totally.
try to play with things that expedite your development, that expedite your creation, and helps you to do things quicker, and even in a standard way, because that way you can validate that the same way you do it in a project. If it works, you can easily create that project with the same specs, different entities, but in a few seconds, right? So this is the idea behind it. It's not entirely about doing no code applications, because you do want to have fun doing code, but focusing on the interesting parts of
Exactly.
the business.
Exactly. It is just a simple technical question. Is this like a component you're using, or is it something you developed?
No, I was just developing this from scratch to
Okay.
play with it a little bit.
But the whole thing that you generate the entities is something. It's something you did, or is it like a?
Yes,
Node
everything's
component?
from scratch.
Oh,
In this example,
nice.
everything's from scratch. It is a basic structure from projects that I've played with in the past that worked
Nice.
for me, that were able to
Nice.
escalate easily. So I took that, and because I knew I was gonna work.
And do you have it? Do you have it in your like in your Git or something? Or
Not just
GitHub
yet. I was just playing with it this morning. So this is a simple type of applications to create. But for instance, maybe you would have taken a couple of days, maybe up to a week, developing this manually. But you can spend 2 to 3 hours creating the tool that helps you to create that. So in a day, you'll have a simple API running, and you can do the same with the web client part of it, the visuals. So you can create a project with an application that has these same modules, but with the lists and with the forms to create or update. So the basic functionality. Again, this is just focused on the CRUD actions, just the basic ones. Relationship in between entities, you manage that, or you automate that part. But again, you have removed at least a couple of days worth of work from any new project that you create.
And that's a lot of time and money.
It is a lot of time and money.
It is a lot. Once you scale it,
yes, exactly.
Think about all the projects, big projects, or any size of projects. This is really cool stuff, man. This is kind of a same mindset I was talking about when I was referring to low code. You don't need to repeat yourself.
Exactly.
You should only focus on the business logic of any project you're working on.
That's eventually where you want to get at.
So yeah, I mean this is really cool. I mean, you just tell me.
I can share it with you, so you can play with it and let me know.
When you have it on, if you ever upload it or have it on GitHub or any space, it will be really cool.
Let me just fix that plural versus singular typo.
Okay.
I'll share it with you. And of course, eventually this is for demo purposes. This was just Node, but you can migrate it. You can create your folder structure and file structure for different technologies, and just, for instance, use the same, but for so I would specify Node here, but eventually you're going to be able to support different type of projects, maybe web applications, maybe Angular, to say something, or React. So this is the type of things that I would like to for you to consider, for your audience to consider. Don't repeat yourself. Automate a big part of your work so you can jump right into the interesting part.
All right. Really, this was a really cool demo, Francisco.
Appreciate it.
Really interesting. Thanks a lot for sharing that.
My pleasure.
I hope that the people who watch this, they will. I'm pretty sure they will find it useful.
And play with it and try to create your own stuff, and try to, for instance, if you want to learn about creating your own agent there are a lot of plugins that help you recognize voice commands and things like that. So you can say, hey, create an API node, and then start interaction like that. So it is fun even to play with.
All right. I think we can wrap it up from now. It's been a long way here, and I really appreciate your time, Francisco. This was
My pleasure.
really cool chat, and I really honestly hope that we can. This is just the first one of more to come. Really
Absolutely.
enjoy
I
all
hope,
the insights.
I hope that too. So for the next one, I'm gonna have a new version out of this
Oh, that
demo
would
and
be
a
really
better
cool.
lighting as well.
No, don't worry about it. All right. Thank you so much for your time, Francisco.
It's been my
Again,
pleasure. Thank you for the invite.
anyone who wants to contact you, can I leave your details here? I think I can leave at least
Feel
your
free.
LinkedIn profile, right?
Yep, sounds good. That works for me.
All right. Thank you, and thanks for anyone who's watching this or who have watched this up to here. Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.